Hello and welcome to Early Years Weekly number 18. Are you surviving, Ruby? Are you doing okay?
No.
It's tough. It's been a tough morning here in the office.
Power cut.
No coffee. So, we might be a little lacking in caffeine this morning, but we make up for it with some energising early years news. And starting off, we have the story that an Ofsted chief has said there's no need to teach phonics before reception.
Yeah, so this news comes from an Ofsted special advisor, Phil Minns, and he has explicitly said that Ofsted have no expectation of seeing phonics taught before reception. Now, he spoke at an early years education conference in London, and that's where we heard the news.
Yeah, so it was reported in the TES that after a question from Dr. Sue Allingham about phonics and the expectations in the early years, that was what he was responding to. Now, the question was asking whether these screening tests on phonics that we see in reception are starting to push down the expectations of phonics into the non-maintained sector in early years. And what he said, he hopes that children are ready to start phonics quite quickly within reception. There is specifically no expectation to do anything in the early years unless practitioners think that children are ready for it. He said, clarified with the TES, that we wouldn't expect to see phonics taught in the first 4 years of the EYFS.
Yeah, and I think there's no better people to ask than you guys. Like, do you think that phonics should be taught before reception? Do you feel the pressure to teach, phonics to children under the age of 4? It would be really interesting to hear what you think. So next up, we have a couple of stories on funding rates.
So first, it's the news that providers across the UK are being left in the dark on what they're going to be getting come April. In October, we heard the news that the government was going to be increasing the 2-year-old rate by 8p and the 3 and 4-year-old rate by a maximum of 8p. Now that's what's going to local authorities. And for many providers, they still haven't heard yet what they're going to be getting. They haven't had those consultations. And this is really difficult because it's the time of year when we need to start budgeting for 2020. And if you don't know what you're going to be receiving, that can make things really hard. We'd love to hear from you down below in the comments about whether you've heard from your local authority yet, and if so, what the news was.
And this news actually comes after a report from the NDNA that showed that £63.5 million of government money was actually underspent regarding the 3 to 4 year old places. Now, 3/4 of local authorities did underspend, and of the 95 that reported this, only 20% have actually given that money onto the providers. So there are still plans for LAs to distribute this money out. And if you are wondering whether you're in a local authority that's planning on doing so, I'd really recommend checking out the report from the NDNA that we'll link down below. So next up, the news on Labour having a new shadow early years minister after the highly regarded Tracy Brabin actually was promoted to the shadow cabinet. Now, Tulip Siddiq, who had previously held the position for 3 months but quit over Article 50, is now back. Now, she served on the all-party parliamentary group for childcare and early education since its launch in September 2017.
I think the general sector response to this seems pretty warm. Tracy Brabin was really popular because she seemed like she was really trying to engage with the sector, and she said lots of good things about the underfunding that we know is plaguing the sector right now. But the fact that Tulip Siddiq has been on this all-party parliamentary group since its inception is really positive news. It means she understands the issues, and in her statement she mentioned that. She said, "There has never been a more vital time to be holding the government to account on its continued underfunding and undervaluing of early years providers." It's really good to see that she understands the issues, and hopefully it means that we'll see some battle around the budget which comes up in April. So finally this week, we have the story from a Christie & Co report that's talking of occupancy figures going down across the country. So their Business Outlook has reported a number of providers saying that their occupancy is on the way down after school leavers leaving in July, and then September and January intakes not necessarily making up the full numbers.
Yeah, and the report actually talked of many settings diversifying the offer to keep up with demands of their business. So, for example, expanding the working hours, opening at weekends and in the evenings, and also acting as these community hubs. So, why is this happening? The birth rate has fallen in some areas, and settings are increasingly facing this competition, especially with school nurseries. As we mentioned in last week's episode, despite the high rate of closures, we're also seeing more investment from abroad coming in, and which is toughening competition even more.
I think it just goes to say that there's tighter margins that are happening right now. That's to do with 30 hours and this stiff competition we're talking about. And it maybe means it's more important than ever to be on top of your occupancy. Know what's coming up, understand the budgets and the finances going forward in order to make sure you're ready for these challenges.
Yep, and I think that's it for this week. So thank you very much for watching. As ever, remember to like and subscribe if you want to keep in the loop. And we'll see you next week.